Are you looking for some easy ways to help keep your dogs and your cats healthy? Or maybe you're worried about cancer. We all should be. About 60% of pets will develop cancer at some point in their life. And I'm right there with you because I've had 3 pets that have actually passed away from cancer. But here's the thing, there's so much we can do to help our pets thrive, avoid cancer, keep them healthy, and keep them living their best life. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor. I'm a holistic veterinarian in the Northern Colorado region. And one of the things that I love doing is helping empower pet parents like you with the knowledge and the education you need to keep your pet feeling their best. We're going to be focusing on medicinal mushrooms. So yes, those fungi, those things that you put into your food to help optimize your health, you can be using them for your pets. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can safely use mushrooms in your dogs and in your cats, and why you can start adding these in to help them. Now, the thing that I want you to keep in mind is that there's a lot of different varieties. And one of the things that I'm going to cover is, how do you know if that mushroom blend, if that mushroom that you're buying, the supplements you're buying, how do you know if it's actually going to help them, or are you wasting money? There's a lot of amazing studies that have been recently shown to how well they can help our dogs, especially in cases of cancer. And I find that that's one of the most common things that people come across first when they're doing research and figuring out what's actually happening. Like when they get a cancer diagnosis, you jump online, you do research, right? We all go to Google. We want to know what is the thing that is going to help our pet the most. And there's an amazing mushroom that you might come across, and we're going to talk about it. So hope you guys are ready. I'm going to give you a recipe with some of these mushroom blends that you can use if you get these mushroom powders that you can actually give to your pets to help them, to help their liver health, help with detox. So get your pens and your papers. But let's start with like the generic thing. So what's all this crazy talk about mushrooms? I'm talking about the mushrooms that you can eat that don't have the psychoactive effect on you. These are the things like your agaricus or button mushrooms. And there's a lot of different kinds of mushrooms, and not all of them are necessarily medicinal. However, most of them actually have medicinal properties. They're really versatile food and supplement, and they can be integrated into your pet's life super easy alongside yours. So prevention of disease, regenerating cells, using them to protect the body against cancer and radiation effects. So powerful when we're looking at what are some of the adjunct treatments for cancer, for radiation, if your pet has to go through that. And also we can utilize them for actually treating certain diseases. Mushrooms are really, really high in nutritional value. So they have vitamins, minerals, enzymes, proteins, lipids, polysaccharides like beta glucans. That's really important. And they also have essential oils like triterpenes. And let's talk about mushrooms first, though. So pretty powerful, right? Who here has ever used mushrooms? So use them, the edible form, not the psychoactive. I don't need to know that. Even though it's Friday, you might want to get a little crazy, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about like, have you added mushrooms into your dog's food? Have you ever used like turkey tail mushrooms? Have you used chaga mushrooms, Coriolis? That's the same thing as turkey tail, by the way. But let me know, what have you used them for? Have you used them in your dog and cat? I'd love to hear from you guys. So drop a comment down below if you're here with us live. But let's talk about the plant itself, that mushroom, because they're really fascinating. And they actually have 3 different parts to the mushroom. We have the spore form. And we don't use the spore form. We're actually surrounded by lots of mushroom spores in the air. We're breathing it in. It's all around us, but that's how they start. And then what happens is they germinate. Those spores germinate and they form hyphae. And this is a fine filament that actually can fuse together and they form a network. And this is called the mycelium, which is actually the vegetative body of the mushroom. This is usually buried in the substrate. So that could be like the soil, it could be in the wood, and that's what it's actually feeding on. And the mycelium is what decomposes the vegetation. And when conditions are right, that mycelium or the vegetative body will then put up a fruiting body. That is your mushroom. So we have spores, we have mycelium, and we have mushroom. And there's a lot of mixed evidence and studies out there talking about, is the mycelium actually providing the nutrients, the things that we want that provide the medicinal benefits? Also, the mushrooms, like it's usually traditionally used for eating and for supplements, right? We cut up the button mushrooms, we stir fry them, we put them in the food. So we're very familiar with mushrooms if you've ever eaten them, and we can use them the same way for our pets. But let's talk a little bit about what are some of these powerhouse mushrooms, the different cultivars that are out there, and what are they known for? So the first one is reishi. And this is actually known as the mushroom of immortality. It has anti-tumor effects, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, immune stimulating properties, which is pretty impressive. There's a lot of research studies that actually show when they analyze the usage of reishi compared to antiviral conventional drug medications, patients responded better to using reishi. How cool is that? So this is where we can use more natural remedies, and we may actually get better results than those conventional drugs alone. That is so powerful, right? And then we also have shiitake, and those shiitake mushrooms can actually help with stimulating white blood cells, the circulation throughout the body. I've used this mushroom quite a bit for my kidney disease patients, so dogs and cats, for that circulation purpose, increasing blood flow to the kidneys. Then we have turkey tail and Coriolis. Who here has heard of turkey tail or heard about all the amazing studies that have been done? And this mushroom actually has the highest concentration of the beta-glucan polysaccharides. So this is what provides those amazing health benefits, what stimulates the immune system for that powerhouse anti-cancer effect. So this is what activates the immune system. And then there's also, so if you go and you type in turkey tail and dogs, what you'll find is a recent study done by Penn University, so the vet school at Penn State, and they actually showed that dogs with hemangiosarcoma, so these typically are splenic masses that bleed, we can sometimes find them too late and the dog passes away on an emergency. They're one of the most common tumors that we have that dogs can get. And they found that when dogs were treated with turkey tail mushrooms, they actually had the longest survival times, even compared to dogs that were treated with chemotherapy. So wow, right? So imagine combining the two, because it's not just one or the other. It's about how can we integrate holistic, conventional to get the best results for our pets. That is always the goal. And I'm not against conventional. And these studies show that we have to open up our minds to the power of the plants, the power of the herbs, how this holistic world, how holistic medicine works. And turkey tail is like leading the way for showing how we can integrate in mushrooms into the cancer treatment. And then we have cordyceps. This is actually grown on a caterpillar, which I find so fascinating, right? It's so interesting. Obviously, that's hard to do and hard and expensive to make cordyceps powder in a really high concentration. So they're also cultivated by growers, and that reduces the cost. The neat thing about cordyceps is that they have antifungal and antibacterial properties. So if you have a dog with itchy skin, you have a cat with itchy skin, and you're like, they have bacterial infections, they're getting fungal and yeast infections, why not start integrating in some of these mushrooms into their diet? Because it may not fix it, but it may be enough to kickstart your pet's immune system so that they actually start healing and they help clear that infection without having to go on numerous antifungals, antibacterial drugs, and then you wreck their microbiome. You catch my drift, right? So these are great ways that we can add them in to hopefully reduce the amount of drugs that your pet would need, especially if they are dealing with a chronic disease or a frustrating disease like allergies. So we have these mushrooms. We have this incredible way that these mushrooms work and help. And how do we extract it? How do we get these amazing components, these polysaccharides, these triterpenes out of the mushroom? And there's different ways that the companies will do it. Some companies will actually use the mycelium. So they'll grow the mycelium. Remember, those are the hyphae forming that network of these fine filaments growing together. And they'll actually grow them on grains. And the downside with that is that when they analyze that mycelium that's grown on grains, they have lower beta glucans and they have a higher starch content if that mycelium is not separated from the grains. That is the majority of the US products if that product is grown in the US. So that's something to be aware of. The beta glucans are the things we want. They have the immunological compounds that are going to help the immune system, that they're going to help if we're treating things like cancer, we're using them for disease condition. So the other thing to keep in mind, and this goes along with herbs, plants, is that the way that those mushrooms are cultivated will actually affect how good the product or the mushroom is. If you're growing it in poor quality soil, there's not a lot of substrate for that mushroom to feed off of. You're not going to have high nutrients. You're not going to have high vitamins. You're not going to have high minerals. We're going to have a poor quality product. So that's really important. It can be a lot harder to figure out like what is in this product, but it's the same thing with herbs and plants, using plants as medicine. If we're growing them in poor quality soil, they won't be as good. That's just a fact. It's just like us eating vegetables. Our soils are really depleted of selenium. And so a lot of times we have to add back in foods that are higher in selenium, or we take multivitamins to cover those microdoses that might be missing in our body that truly optimize our health. Now, the thing is that, so if you see US grown, and we're going to talk about breakdown, what can you look for in those products to determine if you're spending your money well, because you can blow a lot of money on these products. So if you're seeing US grown, most likely they're always that myceliated grain, not necessarily that mushroom, that fruiting body. Remember, the mycelium has to get to the point where they go, yep, produce the fruiting body, up comes that mushroom. And so pure mushroom extracts generally come from China. And as of 2013, China actually grows over 85% of the world's mushrooms. And this has been steadily climbing. So that was 2013. Like, I'd have to get the updated number now, but it's probably pretty high. And the thing is what's happening with those Chinese mushrooms, right? You're probably like, oh, China, like what about all the pet food recalls? Aren't they contaminated? However, China has been doing this for a really, really long time. And so the biggest thing is making sure that the companies are sourcing it from like organic sources, that they're actually testing the product. A lot of times what they're doing is they're using a water extraction. And that's a typical Chinese method to extract those components that we want, those beta glucans, to actually provide the medicinal properties to that mushroom supplement. So, for example, your reishi and chaga mushrooms, those aren't as water soluble compounds. So those triterpenoids that are present in that mushroom are more oil or lipid compound. So they're not soluble in water. And so these companies, they should know that when they're extracting the mushroom extracts out of the mushroom. And a lot of times they'll use things like double extraction, and they'll end up using alcohol to extract out and get all that good richness out of the plant. And then what's left is that fiber. So you might see that companies state like we extract 3 times, twice with water and then once with alcohol. And that will vary depending on the type of mushroom, that type of cultivar, and how they're made up. And so the other thing too that's really interesting is that those polysaccharides are actually a drug product in Japan. They're used as an adjunct to cancer treatment. And it was developed in China and is very similar. So PSP was developed in China, and then we have PSK developed in Japan. And this is not necessarily super important. It's just interesting facts on where mushrooms have come from. And what they will do differently in Japan and China versus growing the mycelium on grains is they grow them in liquid fermentation tanks. Then they extract it and they purify it to make primarily a protein-bound beta-glucan. So that's that polysaccharide that's really important for the immunological activity. And remember, turkey tail has the highest amounts of beta-glucans out of all mushrooms. Reishi's a second, like close second to turkey tail. And remember that reishi is that immortality mushroom. And so when we're looking at, okay, well, how do we know what we should buy? Which one should we use? Are we going to get all the same results from using like turkey tail extracts? You may have come across Immunity, which is a turkey tail supplement that has been promoted for the hemangiosarcoma treatments. However, it's so expensive. So here's a little secret I'm going to let you guys in on, okay? You can use turkey tail extracts. You can use brands like RX Vitamins, Coriolis Forte that are doing things right, that are making sure the beta-glucans are present, and you're going to get the same results, and it costs less. So you're welcome. That's my Friday tip for you. You don't have to necessarily buy the most expensive thing. So if you're like, I can't afford this, like, and then you feel bad and you're like, I killed my pet. I couldn't buy them the thing they needed. You don't have to buy the most expensive. Keep that in mind. And you can most likely get the same results from using turkey tail extracts. So usually those are about 50% beta-glucan levels. So keep that in mind when you're looking at a lot of these different brands, these different supplements that are around. So how can you tell if you're buying high quality products? This is really important. And so if you guys have any thoughts, drop them in the comments, drop them down below, because I'd love to hear, like, what are you guys looking at when you look at supplements? Can be a highly unregulated industry. However, lots of, like, the FDA is also looking for heavy metal contamination. They're testing the products. But like I just mentioned, if that product doesn't have beta-glucans present, you are not going to get the medicinal properties of that mushroom. So take a look. Where was it grown? The company should tell you, where is that mushroom grown? Where is that product sourced from? And like I mentioned, products in China generally have a lot of negativity associated with them. So, you know, how do these companies get organic status for products grown in China? You know, looking at, okay, did they test for this? How did they grow this product? And keeping in mind, it's not economical to grow these mycelium in that fermentation tank. And that's why a lot of the times the companies in the US that are growing them are doing it on like a grain, which will be cheaper. So the thing is that you have to remember mushrooms are 90% water, and that product has to be turned into a powder. So that's why it can get really, really expensive. So it doesn't mean that it's bad if the product is sourced from China when we're talking about mushrooms. So the other thing that you can look at is color. So this is really interesting when you compare different products. So you'll get the mushroom powders, like I buy them and I put in like an immune blend. That's a combination of a lot of these mushrooms that I mentioned. It has the reishi, it has turkey tail, it has agaricus, which is your button mushrooms, chaga. It's a combination of all of them to gain the medicinal properties from those mushrooms. But when you look at the color, the mushroom extracts are going to vary in their color depending on the type of mushroom. So whereas your myceliated grains are almost always going to look the same. So you can take a look if you find like the mushroom, like if you're getting a chaga and you're getting a turkey tail powder and you're comparing the two, if it's a myceliated grain, they're probably going to be a uniform color. They're going to look the same. And so typically they're also lighter. So I know when I look at my products that I'm currently putting in my morning coffee to hide the bitter taste of it, because it doesn't taste good to me. The reishi is actually pretty bitter tasting due to the triterpenes that are present. It's dark. It's not like a light color. So that helps me feel a little bit better that it isn't just a myceliated grain. Now, the other thing you want to do, so if it's in a capsule, I highly recommend opening a capsule and tasting it. Like I just mentioned, your reishi mushrooms are going to taste more bitter. And that's because the main active compound in reishi is your triterpenes. And the bitterness is actually a good thing because it shows that's a high quality reishi extract. And then in contrast, if you have more of a myceliated grain, that's really bland. And it's often saying like the company will market it as there's no mushroom flavor. It tastes fine. You're not going to have any aversion to this. However, the thing is that myceliated grain has a lot of grains in it. And so it might actually just taste like grain and it doesn't have those medicinal compounds in it, which is why we're using them in the first place. The other thing is, does that label, when you turn it around and you look at the ingredient list, does it mention polysaccharides? And the polysaccharides there's different types of polysaccharides. So if it's like high in polysaccharides, you'd be like, fantastic, but which ones? So they can trick you on the label to make you believe that there's a high amount of beta-glucan polysaccharides. Keeping in mind, a lot of these myceliated grain products are lower in your beta-glucans and they're higher in alpha-glucans. And so those alpha glucans are primarily starches, which is not what we want. So that's another thing to be aware of when you're looking at that. Now, there are studies coming out. I was looking at some different studies in terms of your myceliated grains. Paul Stamets I'm going to blank on I can picture, it's a really popular company. And I was listening to one of his talks on YouTube, which was fascinating about honeybees and mushrooms and how there's like this interrelationship, of course, right? Everything's interconnected. But he was talking about myceliated grains, and there's some research studies that he's done to show that when they checked for the immunological activity of those grains, they found them to be higher. Now, I don't know if it's just as high as, say, like doing the fruiting bodies of the mushrooms. So keep that in the back of your mind. It may not all be bad, but these are things that you can look at. What is the beta-glucan content? And a great company is going to show you the percentage. Like I just bought some mushrooms actually today from a company called Real Mushrooms, and it shows like over 20% beta-glucan content, less than 5% alpha-glucans. So like, I know they've tested it, they've looked at it, I know where it's sourced, it's all stated. So does the label say it? And also, what else is on that product label? Does it say mycelium? And so this is actually a requirement by the FDA to properly label whether the product's a mushroom or a mycelium. And that's often overlooked by these brands. And so you want to ideally look for those ones that are going to be higher in beta glucans. Traditionally, that is going to be your fruiting bodies. So if you're going to see myceliated grains, what would that look like on a label? You'll see like US grown once again. You'll see mycelium. You'll see myceliated brown rice. You'll see maybe mycelial biomass. They might also list it as organic white milo, might say fermented, full spectrum, primordio, and exocellular compounds. So there's a lot of like different ways to word that on the product label that may not actually just show exactly what it is. It can be super confusing, but those are some of the things that you can go through, look at the labels and decide, am I spending too much on this product? Am I going to throw away money on this product and actually just eat a bunch of starch? Or am I going to gain the medicinal properties of those mushrooms like turkey tail, chaga, your reishi, and gain some of those amazing immune stimulating, immune helping benefits? Now, in terms of, I'm just going to look at Susie. Yes, Dogs Naturally has a turkey tail product to stop egg growth from growing. Growth actually shrunk. So that's where using mushrooms. So if I was going to look at it, so let's take hemangiosarcoma. What would I do if I was to look at this pet and go, okay, holistic approach. I'm not going to just use turkey tail. I'm going to use turkey tail and make sure that's part of the protocol, because there's so much great research out there to show that we gain longer remission times. But you also got to look at the food. What food are you feeding your pet? Is that food being optimized? If they're on a processed food, you got to get them off of processed food, or we're going to be feeding inflammation. We're trying to reduce starches here. We don't want carbohydrates in that diet, or we want very minimal. And any of those carbs are going to come from high value vegetables, leafy greens, your broccoli, your asparagus, your Brussels sprouts. Let's use the foods that are going to support detox pathways, have high glutathione content in them. I'd also look at what other supplements can we use that are supporting the immune system. So if your pet is going through chemotherapy, we know we're going to take a hit. The body is going to take a hit. So that's where using some reishi also, keeping in mind, like, yeah, we want the turkey tail, highest concentration of beta glucans, but how can we utilize some of these other mushrooms to gain the other medicinal properties? So I usually combine different mushrooms when I'm looking at a patient because I want to gain those benefits. The other things I'm looking at are what other benefit, like what other supplements, what other nutraceuticals are going to provide anti-cancer properties to that patient. So using things like high doses of curcumin if it's appropriate. Remember, this is not advice to say, like, if your pet has this disease, go and do it. Make sure you talk to your veterinarian or schedule an appointment with an integrative vet to make sure that they're doing okay. So that's really, really important. But those would be kind of the things I'm looking at. And then, of course, I'm also looking at that pet. What are those imbalances and how do we balance them with Chinese herbal medicine? Because we know that that cancer came from a root imbalance. There was something off in that body. The immune system missed those cancer cells that allowed the cancer to form. So let's work on optimizing the pet's body. Yes, they have cancer, but it doesn't mean that it's like all done. Like, good luck, see you later. Let us know when you're ready to put them down. Like, no, we can do stuff. Like, that's the thing. There's a whole world of medicine we can integrate in. And if you decide to use chemotherapy, your pet will respond better to chemotherapy and recover so much faster. So the other thing, Dylan, I love that you posted this, Cordyceps complex, help with his allergies. Yes, Cordyceps, antifungal, antibacterial properties. So if your pet has a chronic frustrating condition, we can put in these nutraceuticals, real food sources. We can add in supplements to fill in the gaps that maybe the diet isn't meeting all the needs. And we can help your pet feel their best and reduce vet visits and reduce the cost of vet care. How amazing is that, right? Like, if I have to see you a lot, like, I love seeing you, I love seeing your pet, but you shouldn't have to see your vet all the time. It should be like annual preventative wellness exams. Let's check the blood work. Let's make sure we're not missing something that, isn't showing up that I can give a name to, and then we'll fix it before it becomes a problem. Hey, that's a holistic approach right there. So anyways, today I was doing house calls and I met with a new patient, and this kitty has grade 2 kidney disease and being fed, cardboard prescription diet. Of course, cat's not eating it. The owner accidentally ate a little bit of it. Like, I've actually never tried it. I actually don't trust to eat that junk. However, the thing is that she actually there was a little bit on her finger and she was, I guess, eating some other food that kind of looked like it. And she ate it. And she said it tasted so awful. And she's like, that's why my cat won't eat it. And I was like, exactly. That's why so many cats don't eat that junk. And it tastes awful. And there's so many other better options. However, her vet refused to work alongside someone that has a holistic approach because she doesn't like holistic medicine. I'm like, for one, I don't care if you don't like it because it works. And there's plenty of patients that showcase how it works and how it helps them. Two, why are you limiting the amount of treatments that can help your patient? We're all here to make pets better. We should all work together. It's just like me sending a patient to a dermatologist or to an oncologist for chemotherapy. We can use both together. There doesn't need to be a fear. And let's look at this as a holistic approach. I know herbs. I did the study for herbs. I did the study for acupuncture. I did the normal vet study too. So I know conventional medicine. So you don't have to know that. You don't have to be afraid of it. Allow the specialists, allow the people that are informed about that stuff to be able to partner with them. So guess what? You don't lose a client. Because guess what happened? She just lost a client. That's what happens. The clients are like, why wasn't this offered to me? And so that's the thing. Like, so for Sherry, so many foods that are more palatable than kidney diets. Most animals don't need to be on a low protein diet at that point. And this is where you can use like Ganoderma, shiitake, and increase the blood flow. So I use a lot of like standard process supplements that have those in them, or you can even use the powders. You can use like your turkey tails if you're using them for cancer, but specifically for kidney disease. So I usually do like a homemade diet, or I'm formulating lower phosphorus, but you can also go to catinfo.org and you can see an entire list that was accumulated by Dr. Lisa Pearson and formulates out the protein, carb, fat, and phosphorus content for all the like over-the-counter foods. And if you're not in the US, like I apologize, but what you can do is you can take a look at those resources and you can compare them to what's out there in the market, where you're at in the world. And you can find other foods that are actually utilizing like real protein, go figure, less like byproducts, less brewer's rice, and your cat will usually start eating it. Like, it just breaks my heart that we're so set on these like cardboard prescription diets that shouldn't even be given to these pets, because studies have shown that a lower protein diet doesn't help them. But hey, it is what it is. The more people that start integrating in and asking for a holistic approach, not saying get rid of conventional, we need it. We still need those things. Like, there is a time and a place, but the more people that start getting on board, that start feeding their pets real food diets, that start showing the veterinary world that your pet is doing better with these changes, and they don't have to be on a processed diet to achieve optimal health, things will have to change. It already is. It's hard and it's slow, but it's a movement, and you guys are a part of it. And that's what's really, really exciting. So, I think so I just got a question from Tina on Facebook for looking at your liver disease. So liver disease is super common also amongst animals. For one, if your pet has high liver values and they are on a processed food diet, get them off of it. So if you've followed me before, if you haven't, make sure you follow me, because I provide a lot of free content, free information. Get in our Facebook community that is free, the Natural Pet Parent community. We do weekly Q&As. I talk a lot about glyphosate, which is Roundup. And your pet food, the kibble diets are full of it, chocker full of it. And that will lead to liver elevations. So a lot of times that's all that's needed, is transitioning them off of that processed food onto a more real food diet. If you need help formulating a home cooked diet, we do telehealth consultations. I have nutritional plans where we can formulate that for you. You can do raw diets. Like raw is the way to go. You have a cat, your cat's an obligate carnivore, and dogs are carnivores. We're like trying to turn them into omnivores, and it doesn't work. So the thing is that there's all these appropriate species appropriate diets. And if you want to learn more about diets, make sure you join our webinar that's at the end of this month. We're going to be taking a deep dive into fresh versus raw versus kibble diets and the pros and cons. And I'm going to be providing you with lots of resources so that it makes it easier for you, because it's super confusing, right? You probably are super confused, and you read things, you go to your vet, and your vet's like, oh my God, if you feed raw, they're going to be dead, and then you're going to kill yourself and your children. And I'm like, do you cook for yourself? Do you like pick up the raw meat from the store and then like cook? Oh, okay, yeah. So same thing, like wash your hands, practice safe hygiene. So, okay. Like the thing is like it's simple. Like Dylan, definitely raw feeding is a science. So when I say like real food, raw food, it's not like put down a piece of meat. You do that, you will create vitamin, mineral imbalances. You will screw your pet up. So lots of times people are not balancing those diets. They're not putting enough calcium in. They're not adding enough things for copper, for the iron. Zinc is low. There's not enough vitamin E. So do your research or work with someone or take a course. Check out Raw Feeding Veterinary Society or Raw Feeding Veterinary Society. I think I'm saying it wrong, but Holistic Vet UK. Check him out. They have tons of resources. Get Dr. Connor Brady's book, Feeding Dogs. Just one sec. It's right here. get this, get this, get this book. It's like a textbook, but it'll tell you how to do things. It'll tell you how to balance the food. And it'll also scare the bejesus out of you for ever feeding a processed diet ever again. It also explains why the vet industry is the way that it is. And so, yes, and that is a great point. So someone mentioned, so needs to be complete. Yes, has to be complete. Like a lot of people just put down vegetables and meat, and that is not a complete diet. So you need to make sure that you are putting in those things that are going to fulfill the zinc, the vitamin E, the copper, the iron, the magnesium. Those are all things. And here's the thing. If you get out there and you're like, I'm going to screw up my pet, guess what? There's companies that will help you with the vitamin mineral tests that you can check your pets. And if you're doing that, I recommend doing that at least twice a year. If you're doing a homemade diet, whether it's raw, whether it's a home cooked diet, you are putting it together. And even if it is like a pre-made diet and you're getting it from a company, still do this because it might be off. And that way, you know, and you go, oh, my pet's low in iron. What do I need to supplement more? Maybe I need more organ meats, or maybe I need, if you don't want to do organ meats, then you need to supplement it with a synthetic vitamin or mineral. So that's the key. And then adding the mushrooms in, going back to the mushrooms, of course. So I use mushrooms for their medicinal properties. And it's a great way. What's really cool too is there's actually a lot of studies of showing how certain mushrooms are high in vitamin D. So we can use those as vitamin D source. And that's where using the software to formulate based on the requirements that are necessary for your dogs and cats can really help make sure that those diets are balanced. So that is definitely kind of got off track there. I wanted to give you a little, like a brief mushroom mix for helping to optimize your pet's health. So remember, I like using blends, using different mushrooms together. So we're gaining the benefits of those different things. So this is where both dogs and cats. So Mary, yes, both dogs and cats can benefit from this. Keeping in mind, like if it's super bitter, like turkey tail tends to be more sour, your reishi tends to be more bitter. You could have a palatability issue where they're like, so that's where you can hide it in the food, or you can start with small amounts, or you can use it in a capsule. You could get a gelatin capsule and put it in there too. And then you can put it in the food so your pet doesn't eat it. But what you can do is get the dried mushrooms. So you can go to the store, get the dried mushrooms, or you can even get the powders from a good quality company using the things that I listed, looking at, taste, color. What are the beta glucan contents? Does it list it as polysaccharides? Is it mycelium? Is it a mushroom? Looking at that when you go through that. And this will be reposted. So Sherry, don't worry, this will be posted as IGTV. It will also be on our Facebook page, The Natural Pet Doctor, for you to rewatch to get all of that. But you can take 2 tablespoons of each mushroom. So if you're using like maitake, your reishi, shiitake, turkey tail, 2 tablespoons of each. Mix it with 4 ounces of hot water. And then you can also add in an amino B-plex, so your amino acid. So RX Vitamins has a great brand. So let's say like your pet is down, or their immune system isn't as strong, they're fighting cancer, they're going through chemotherapy. We can add in other supplements to this mix and then mix it all together, and you can store it in the fridge. And then you're going to give about 0.5 ml per 5 pounds of your pet twice a day. So dogs, cats, you can mix it in. You might have to start with a little bit less, especially if you are adding an amino B-plex. It's supposed to be palatable, but I've tried giving it to my cats, and I've had some clients say like, my pet doesn't like it. And then I've had other clients that are like, my cat will drink the whole bottle if I gave it to them. So start with less, work your way up, but 0.5 ml per 5 pounds twice daily of 2 tablespoons of each mushroom, either dried, powder, mix it up with 4 ounces of hot water, and then put it in the fridge and add it to their meals. And you are going to provide a great immune stimulating, immune optimizing benefit for your pets for life. So I hope you found that really helpful. If you need help with foods, or you're just super confused, or you're like, I want to do better, join our monthly webinar this month. You can go to thenaturalpetdoctor.com, click the little thing at the top, and that's where you can register. It's also in our link in our bio if you're watching this on Instagram. It's happening on the 28th, 31st. I don't know how many days in the month, the last day of the month, the 31st. And what we're going to do is I'm going live for 2 hours to teach you the things. And you will also get a free resource on how to feed your pets. What tests do I recommend to make sure that they're balanced? So lots of amazing resources. You also get a month's access to our VIP Natural Pet Club, which has all of our previous webinars every single month, our bonus webinars, our resources. There's PDF guides in there. You get access to that for the entire month. So definitely check it out. It's huge value for what you are getting. And I'm so excited about it. So next week, we're going to be talking about omega-3 essential fatty acids. What does that mean for your dog and your cat? Should you be supplementing? So make sure you join us next week, Friday, 7 a.m. We'll go back to our coffee talk. Now you can just have your happy hour talk right now. So finish a glass of wine. Cheers to you for finishing out a long week and joining me and empowering yourself so that you can help your pets live their best, most natural lives. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley. Take care, and I will see you guys all next week.